Hey middle schoolers, Mr. T here. This session is a feedback session. Many of you turned in work that looks something like this, which is unfinished, and it needs to look more like this. So the question is, how do you push it from an outline drawing to a more finished looking drawing? And there's a few things that you need to do. One is you need to create more contrast. So for example, these windows near the top. This is white trim on our house, so I'm going to leave that open and white. But the inside trim is a dark brown or black. And this is the trim that holds the windows in place. So look for this on your building. Windows are not just this. That's cartoon stuff, that's kindergarten stuff. The more closely you look, you'll see that windows have a wood or metal trim that holds the panes of glass in place. Even that looks more realistic. So going back to my drawing here, so there's a trim, and then this is divided into smaller sections with thinner pieces of wood here. Keeping it dark. All right, so what's going to help your drawing look more realistic is contrast. So now I have this white thick wood trim and this dark thinner trim that holds the windows, and a third tone to include would be just a light shading of the windows themselves. This allows our eye to see the difference between what's going on in here and the trim and the siding. So I need to see more contrast, more details with the trim, things like that, and shading. And how do you get this to look more realistic is by shading. I did some of it here. Let me show you how that's done. First, underneath things like the eave of a roof, it's going to be the darkest right there. Okay, so nice crisp dark line. And then holding my pencil very far back like this to have a light touch, I'm going to go ahead and just carefully shade this whole area. I need to move this, excuse me. There we go. When I took this photo, the sun was overhead, so we had some nice good shadows happening on the face of this house. Depending on when you took your photo, shadows will be different. I don't know. Now this isn't quite there. This is like step one. The next step is to then deepen the shading and create a little bit more of an ombre, a little bit more of a natural look like this by starting with that crisp dark line underneath the roof and fading as I work my way down the face of the house. So I want to try to match that dark line at first, and then allow my pencil work to get lighter and lighter as I go down the face. You notice I just turned my pencil a little bit. That's a good way to get a sharp tip, to find a fresh sharp tip of your pencil. the shadow on top of that window. Overall, even it out just a touch. If you're really good at shading, you can just leave it like that, or get a dry finger or a cloth and just lightly smudge it. That will smooth it out nicely. Now you can see it kind of dirtied up my window a little bit. Coming back and reestablishing that trim, that white trim, will crisp that up a little bit so you can see it. Or you could take your eraser and gently, carefully come in here and crisp up that white trim a little bit, if that's the color of your trim, I don't know. So shading will make a huge difference. And you can see on my finished piece, I also shaded the front sideways. In reality, this is a bunch of boards that go across and lines, but I didn't want to do all that, so I just did some shading to give it some tone. This is a grayish blue house. And then creating a new tone with this short roof right here and some texture. You can see there's the roof tiles on there. Shading underneath the eaves on these posts. A deeper, darker shadow under the porch because it's even further back. And there's less light back in there. So increasing the contrast is super important to make it look more realistic. And then the final step is adding dimension. And many drawings did not have dimension, or it was not added correctly. So let me demonstrate that here. I got started over here. So originally, many people's pictures look like this. You just see the face of the house. But then how do you put in that 1-point perspective? Well, it's pretty simple. You always follow the same rules. Starting from the corner of the rooftop down to the 1 point. Zoop, make a line. From the bottom corner of the roof, make a line. And then you have to determine how thick your house is. I can make it skinny like this. I can make it wider. My house looks best, realistically, somewhere in here. So I threw in a vertical line here. And then since there's a little bit of an overhang from my roof, this little bit right here, I do the same in the back. Okay, it makes it look more realistic, more natural. As far as adding in windows and features on the side of your house that goes back in space, you have to line these up with points that you already have. For example, the top edge of these windows comes to this point on the corner. So I use that point, line it up with the vanishing point, made a guideline, and now that's the top of my windows for the sides. I did the same with the bottom. This comes to about, the very bottom here comes to here. I line that up with the vanishing point, made a line. Okay, so I have two guidelines where I sandwich my windows in between. Don't forget the trim and the details on the sides of the windows. All right, that's going to help it look more realistic. Okay, same with down here. Like, let's say I have some windows down here. Where does the top of the windows line up with? Well, in my case, if I look back, it's somewhere right in here. Windows are a little bit lower than something like I don't have a guideline or anything. So line up. There's the top of the windows, bottom of the windows. Those are my guidelines. And then I've got one large window down here. So here's the front edge, back edge. There's that unique trim where the top is a little bit thicker than the bottom. Here's the bottom trim. And the edges, the vertical sides, okay? So you always line things up with the vanishing point. Now, let's see. One other issue I'm hearing is that people can't get a crisp photo of their home. They go out in front and there's trees in the way or bushes in the way, or their house is connected to another house, it's a duplex or something like that. Do the best you can. There's a little bit of guesswork here. If I was to stand exactly in front of this house, there's actually a giant tree right here somewhere, like right here. Takes up like a third of the house. So that's fine. You just step to the side, right? You know, you just have to adjust a little bit. Also, an option is Google Earth. If you go on Google Earth, type in your address, you can see all different angles of your home. It's pretty amazing. You can get a street view and see this exact same view of your home. And then you can get details that way as well. Okay. So this is what I want from you. Go back to your finished looking piece. Add contrast. Add more details. Add shading. Make sure you have dimension. And then send it back to me. Okay, resubmit it. All right. Absolute best of luck. Take good care, you guys. Chat at you soon.